Good evening, guys. This is kind of my little vlog, blog thing. I don't know what you want to call it, about my Spravato treatments. And today was my first one. So I made sure to write down everything I wanted to say about it after eating, because I was starving after leaving. The treatment was scheduled for 3 p.m., and I wasn't supposed to eat after 1:45 or drink after 2:45. So Spravato is a ketamine, esketamine nasal spray that works to help treat depression when your neurotransmitters aren't communicating. To qualify for this treatment, you must have tried two antidepressants, both for 8 weeks at a time, and if they were ineffective, you'd be considered to have treatment-resistant depression and would qualify. The FDA approved this in about 2009, no, 2019, sorry, I believe. I've been on at least 17 antidepressants since I was a teenager, and now I'm 35. Insurance wanted me to list them, and it's even possible I don't remember a couple that may have been real short lived runs. So, a few years ago, I tried TMS, which stands for transcranial magnetic stimulation, which helped for a few months, but then it faded. And I tried a year later from the first run with similar tapering off effects. Getting the Spravato treatment set up took about 2 months of back and forth with insurance and the doctor's office, and suddenly it was here. I'd known about it about a year ago, but I wasn't able to afford it at the time. Spravato comes in the form of a nasal spray, and after the nasal spray, which is self administered, I sat in the box of a room that is pictured in these pictures, which I'm told is the big room, on seemingly really old kind of faux leather recliner, which was comfortable enough for the required 2 hours of observation time in the hospital after administration. I was told it peaks at about 40 minutes and then it starts to taper off. So periodically I had my blood pressure taken and was checked on. One thing that all people I've watched on YouTube or have written is that the taste of it is bitter and awful, and you can add me to the list of testimonials. It's bad after the first spray and worst after the second. The best way I can describe it is like when you're in a pool and accidentally like snort up some water in your nose, and then you can just feel the chlorine burn in your sinuses, and it kind of lingers there. But in addition to that, um, this tastes what I imagine battery acid tastes like. So it was literally hard to swallow. I took an Uber to the hospital where the treatments were taking place, because you're not allowed to drive home after treatment. And in the Uber, I was a mix of anxious and excited, but not like big swings of either, just kind of waiting to see what would happen when it did happen. And as soon as I got to the hospital, and sat down in the empty waiting room, the anxiety really flared. Dan was the guy who's in charge of the Spravato treatments for me at the hospital, and who I had been in close touch with through the whole pre-insurance approval process, working out a schedule, and walking me through having to give my consent to the pharmacy for the medication, etc. I talked to him on the phone and email, but now I was finally meeting him. We both had like a grin and a laugh when he asked me how I was on the way back to the treatment room, and I told him anxious, depressed, and tired in that order. So as soon as I got into the room, everything moved very quickly. He had me do a test run with the tester spray, that had no medication or anything in it, just to practice how to hold it and like press the button all the way, make sure that you're like fully inhaling and insert it in my nose the right way. So then I signed a paper, that we went through that process and we were on to the real thing. First treatment starter dose was two nasal sprays. Both were separate units. It's either this Thursday, which is my second treatment, or next week that I start on 3 sprays, which is the higher recommended therapeutic dose. So, alongside of doing a lot of research on how the medication worked, I also searched YouTube for videos of people who had been through it and their results. And there aren't a lot of people who have spoken about it on YouTube, so I decided to add to the list. So, people didn't see an improvement right away, and out of maybe 5 people that I watched, 2 of them didn't seem to notice an improvement at all. And even though one of them said that people around her had noticed a difference, she didn't feel like there was much of a change, which is much how I felt when I did TMS. So that woman hadn't finished her treatments, and I'm hoping that in her third month she has some results. So after I administered the first dose, we had to wait 5 minutes for the second one, and during that time I had a tinge of feeling off. It was like the lights in the room, which were still on at the time, seemed brighter, and it was harder to focus and listen. And after the second dose, I was starting to disassociate. So disassociation is one of the possible side effects of ketamine esketamine. Dan turned on one of the sort of wavy colored light lamps, which I took extensive pictures and videos of while I was sitting in there during those 2 hours. One, because I figured it'd make for good visuals for a video, but it was almost like a different, more focused experience watching them through the screen rather than on the walls. So it was nice because for the perfectionist that I am, I, in this case, was not worried about photo composition. I was just taking photos as I felt like it. So kind of a different experience and that like calm during it. So, but when it all first hit me, I was all out of sorts, but it wasn't a bad thing. It was mostly really hard to focus. I was like cracking jokes like, Dan, I'm trying real hard to like keep my composure here. What? This is happening. And the best way I can describe it is if you've ever been in the hospital with like severe pain in the ER and they give you morphine and it kills all the pain and makes everything seem like it's under a blanket or in a cloud, that's the same sort of thing except more mental. And for a couple minutes, I felt like my body was even incapable of producing anxiety. I even had like a tinge of guilt that I wasn't absolutely miserable, which is my general baseline these days. Dan closed the door with the lights off and the lamp going, and I was feeling pleasant. I got on my phone and opened Spotify because it was recommended to be listening to relaxing music or meditation, though regular music was not off the table. And I sort of skipped that part first and put on a playlist I really liked. Um, and as fast as I had been pumped up, like a balloon, I was rapidly being deflated by sadness because the songs reminded me of someone I miss a lot. I ended up ceasing on the third song of the playlist. Not that I had gotten all the way through the first two. On the first one, I triggered this mental strangulation and I flipped through two more and I was totally defeated. I felt like this was going to be another failed attempt at getting better, and as soon as I leave, the medicine would wear off and I'd be back to being miserable again. Especially because most of these people that I had listened to had not seen results for weeks, if not months. So Dan came in and I told him I was feeling sad and I had this upsetting thought about how it would feel when it wore off. And he said that that's a common thought to have. So he said sometimes people come in and they're going to have a super sad emotional day, and other times you'll just be really happy, and it's likely that it'll be a little different each time. So that grounded me, and I switched to listening to delta waves the rest of the time. And the sounds we're listening to right now are very similar to what I was listening to on Spotify. There's a lot of binaural beats on Spotify and YouTube, and I'll link the music we're listening to below in the description. The delta waves were okay for the first half hour, but I got majorly sick of them as time progressed, and I started to get a headache. So here I am now, I'm all tripped out on ketamine in this room, starting to feel cold, and I'm physically uncomfortable and not enjoying the delta waves. And I think the last half hour was the hardest with all of those sensations. But on the upside, I stopped spiraling downward and rebounded there. By the end, I was just literally laying there and just kind of existing. And though I was uncomfortable, it was also kind of nice that like my anxiety wasn't like a 90% like for 2 hours. I was just kind of being. So yeah, the colored lamp was pretty much the best part of it and gave me a lot of comfort to kind of watch the colors dance on the walls and the ceiling. My mind also quieted considerably compared to its normal million miles an hour state, and I felt calm, uncomfortable but calm. After the 2 hours had passed, I was released and took another Uber home. The headache faded, but then came back about an hour or so later, so I did take some Tylenol. Dan said it might be because it was my first treatment, and I hope it's that because I would like to enjoy the calm and my neurons high-fiving each other without the discomfort. So, my next treatment is Thursday. It's twice a week for the first month, And when it starts to be in my system consistently, we wean down to 1 week um, every week, or one time a week every month. One time a week the second month. So all through the second month, 1 week. And then the third month, depending on how I'm doing, it's like once every other week. So I've heard hints of possibly doing this longer than 3 months, and I know that people have done it longer than 3 months, but it's depending on how I'm doing, what insurance wants to cover, and all that. And I hope I'm a million times better at the end of 3 months. That'd be amazing. I only heard one person in a video say that they felt like better than they had in years at the end of their treatment. But I'm going off a real small sample size, and I'm going off like just, this kind of uh, attitude of, you know, what's going to work? Is it going to work? I want it to, but I don't want to get my hopes up. But I do. I really want it to work. So for now, I'm still sort of off feeling. It's been several hours since I've been home. The calm feeling has been tapering off. I'm kind of struggling with the lack of instant betterness that I knew wasn't going to happen realistically, but I wanted regardless. So I want to note for myself in particular that I had 10-second kind of teary sniffle putting my mom to bed. Mom's got ALS, and I just had this thought, like when I was a little kid, everything was great and happy, and here I am now, and life's real hard. But it was only 10 seconds though. Usually a thought like that prompts a way longer cry. So going to aim to make videos about each treatment for myself as well as for anyone else who's looking to do the Spravato treatment. You're looking to see how other people's results are and their journeys. So, yeah, we'll talk Thursday. Good night.